Well, I think it's pretty hard to blame Anderson. You know, you have to have a good dance partner. Um, Anderson looked great against Chris Lieben, but Chris Lieben came right at him. It was the same thing with Rich Franklin. If you're going to fight, two guys have to come to fight. And, Dana had done an interview, and I really think he hit it on the head. He said, look, these guys say they're planning to go out there and fight Anderson, and they take one leg kick, and it's so hard and powerful that it changes their mind, and then they run away from him. So it's like anything. If you go to a dance and your dance partner isn't going to dance, it doesn't matter how good you are. You're not going to be made to look good. So, it's hard to just pin it on him. He does other things that I think are starting to annoy a lot of people. Showmanship and the things that he does out there. But again, my suspicion is he's doing that to try to lure a guy in. He's doing anything he can to try to get a guy to engage. So it's pretty to just pin it on Anderson.
This fight's taken a lot of turns. First, Miller was supposed to fight Okami. Okami got injured, and then we heard that Ed Herman was potentially going to be the replacement, and then we heard it was you, and it is you. So talk to me about how that all came about. Was Ed offered the fight? Because I know he's a teammate of yours, and how did you end up getting the fight?
Yeah, it was Ed's fight. Joe Silva called, and he had Matt Lindland on the phone, and he asked for Ed Herman to take the fight. Ed had just finished a match with Loazo, so he's in great shape, and it just made sense that he would want to get back in and have another match. So Matt wasn't able to get a hold of Ed, but he told Joe Silva, yes, Ed will do it. I know him well enough. I know he'll want the fight, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it became Ed's fight. Then Matt got a hold of Ed, and Ed said, no, I don't want the fight. So Matt called me and said, I don't know why. No, it was. I still don't know why. I see Ed every day. He comes to practice every day. He's training. His weight's good. He was in great shape, but for whatever reason, he didn't want to fight with Miller. I don't know if it was the opponent or the date, or I really could only guess. I really don't know why he said no. But Matt said, "Hey, I'm gonna be in trouble here with Joe Silva. Will you take the fight?" And I was driving to practice at the time. I said, "Yes, I'll take it." And then about 5 minutes later, I pulled into practice, and I was 36.2 pounds overweight. And this was May 1st, so I'll have 22 days to lose 36.2 pounds, which will be a record for me. So it was quite a chore that they put in front of me, but that's really how it happened. I said I'd do it, and here we are.
So did you ever have, I know you said you see Ed in practice all the time. You guys never spoke about why he didn't want to take this fight?
No.
He's not injured or anything.
No, he thanked me for he said, "Hey, thanks for taking that fight. I was going to be in trouble with Joe Silva. I appreciate you doing that." And that's where it ended. I just said sure, and I never asked him why he didn't take it.
So this is kind of interesting to me because I think, as fans of media, we're led to believe that you guys don't have a lot of say in terms of whether you do or don't fight a guy, unless it's an injury issue.
Sure.
But I'm not getting that. So is this common that fighters will determine that they just don't want to fight a particular individual or at a particular time?
No, the only thing that made this a unique situation is it was being done as a favor. Joe Silva was calling up and saying, "Hey, this is last minute. We had an injury. Somebody pulled out, and I've got to fill a slot on the card. I need somebody to step in on last notice and do me a favor." If Joe Silva comes to you with a favor request, politically it's always best to do Joe Silva a favor. But you're not required to. There's not that unwritten rule of requirement. Whereas if you haven't fought for 3 months, he calls you with a fight.
Right.
Whoever that opponent is who you're going to be fighting.
Okay. And Chael, from a fighter standpoint, does it take a little bit of the pressure off? And let me explain where I'm going. It seems like there's a lot of cuts these days with the UFC because there's so many fighters out there that sometimes guys are losing one fight, two fights, and they're done. But it would seem to me if you're taking a fight on short notice and they know that, and it was kind of the favor situation, maybe a little bit of that pressure is off? Like, it's not that obviously you're not going to try to win the fight, but in the event that you don't, it's not going to have the same impact on your career as if you had a full camp and they know that?
I don't know how that works. There is no unwritten rule. I would suspect that if I lost another fight, I'd be in a very vulnerable situation, and I don't think that any of that vulnerability is going to be released for doing him a favor. No, I think you're in the same spot. You still got to go out and perform and do the same, which is why, in this business you've always got to be ready.
Right. So let's talk about Dan Miller. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He's 11-1 overall. The majority of his wins have come by submission. At this point, I assume you've had time to look at some tape, get a feel for him. What do you know about him? What do you see when you look at his fights?
Well, I watched as many of his fights as I could, and I was kind of surprised with how good he is. I didn't realize that he's quite as good as he is. I've never seen him in trouble. I'd never seen him get punched. Not one time in any of the 4 fights I watched, I see him get hit in the face. He ends up on top, even against superior wrestlers, and he goes for really risky submissions that generally wouldn't work, and he finds a way to submit guys. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, but he's submitting more guys than your top black belt. So does a really good job. I think this fight's going to be a little bit unique for him. Most of the guys he fought were orthodox, albeit southpaw. He favors a specific takedown where he hooks and trips the lead leg, which is the right leg. I'll have the other leg forward. So he's going to have to do a couple of different skills than he did in the highlight reel that I watched on him. And he's going to have a hard time getting the top position. But other than that, I was surprised with how good he is.
Now, you also talked about a vulnerability, in terms of if you lost. But we also heard rumors before this fight came up that you were going to be on UFC 102 potentially against Wilson Govea. What can you tell us about that, if anything?
Oh, yeah, no, I got tricked there a little bit. I have a contract, a signed contract to fight Wilson Govea on August 29th. When this fight arose, I assumed that was in addition to the Wilson Govea fight because I already had a signed bout agreement. I accepted this fight as a favor. I faxed the paperwork in, and then the UFC said, okay, we'll go ahead and take you off that August card, so don't worry about that one. I was going, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know this was an either-or situation. I thought this was an extra match. So I found that out after the fact, which was a little disheartening, but that was the situation nonetheless.
Yeah, because it would seem like you'd be a natural fit to be on that Portland card because you have such a strong following in Oregon, and we've seen them do that. They always want local guys on cards, especially the first time they're being brought to an area.
Sure. Most important, I legalized mixed martial arts in Oregon. That's very hard to do. The UFC spent millions of dollars, state after state, attempting to get it legalized. I did that on my own. I'm very proud of it. It's one of the bigger accomplishments I've had. Formed a political action committee, lobbied the legislature. Ultimately, I testified in front of the Senate subcommittee, and I got the laws changed. I opened the doors not only for MMA, but also for Vince McMahon and professional wrestling to return to Oregon. I think if the UFC knew that, that might change things. I'm not just another guy in this state in terms of MMA. I'm the guy that allowed it to be legal. We went to court 7 times. It was to great expense and took several years. And I got the law changed. So I think if Joe Silva knew that fact, it may change his mind, and he may say, well, the guy that made this whole thing possible, maybe we got a spot for him on the card after all. I don't know, but I do plan to drop that in Joe's ear when I see him next week in Vegas.